Obviously, we know what the UK is doing, but it's the receiving end as well. We have to look at countries in Europe. Morning to you.
Morning. Yeah, no, we obviously don't have control over what the countries in Europe are doing, but I think what we'll find is countries who have got on with the vaccination programme, like Malta, will be very pleased to see British tourists and visitors. Countries who have still got some way to go, Germany in this particular case, because the vaccination programme is not at the same level, will probably be rather more cautious. And we've got the Delta variant, of course, and it's understandable they want to come to their own decisions.
How real is the possibility that Angela Merkel, Emmanuel Macron, might impose restrictions on Brits?
Oh, well, they may well do, but at the moment, I'm afraid both of those countries are, in any case, in our amber list, so people wouldn't be able to travel there anyway for holidays. And there are, as I say, fortunately, other green list countries which we've been able to open up where there are no such restrictions.
But they can travel, of course, as long as they observe quarantine upon their return.
We do. They can. We say don't go there for holidays. That's what the green list is for. There may be people who need to, in extreme cases, visit countries for reasons unrelated to holidays, perhaps a sick relative, right, or something like that. But we don't make. We generally don't encourage travel outside of the green list, as you know.
The tests that are required to permit foreign travel, you may be aware, and I've heard from some listeners, seem prohibitively expensive in this country. I am told it's circa £450 per head, which is a heck of money to add. I appreciate that we're not going on holiday. I get all of that. It might be, but they're so much more expensive than European countries. Why?
Yeah, I don't urge you. Actually, I think we were talking a couple of months ago, and I very much shared the concern about the cost of the test. We have done a lot of work with the private testing sector, which is where you have to go for these tests. We don't use the NHS tests. You can't go away and then use an NHS test and trace facility. So you've got to buy those tests privately, and it has driven down the price. We've brought in hundreds of new providers. So there are now 400 government-approved providers. You'll find those on gov.uk. And that site also enables you to filter and then list by price. I was having a look through yesterday. Quite a lot of providers are around the £50 level now. So yes, there are additional costs. I'm afraid that's the upshot of having a pandemic that the world is living through. But we've seen the very high costs go. And where there are higher cost providers, they tend to be because they're adding an additional service. For example, they come to your home and do the tests in those cases. So we split those off into the higher level of service that probably won't be for everyone.
You hinted at, and we must remind listeners, of course, we must hope that levels stay low and then hospitals stay relatively clear, but you hinted at the possibility of 2 jabs and off you go. When will the next decision about that be made, Secretary of State?
Yeah, so I've said I'll come back next month and say more about it. And you're right. I thought it was a good idea to let people see what we were seeing, which is increasingly scientific data showing that if you've had 2 jabs, then you're pretty well protected and much less likely to carry the disease to other people as well. And therefore, we might be able to have a situation where we treat people who are jabbed going to an amber country as if they were going to a green country, meaning that they would not have to quarantine. But there are quite a lot of things we need to sort out before we can do that. What would happen with children, for example, and the Joint Committee for Vaccines and Immunisation have yet to opine on whether children should be able to get vaccines or not. What happens because not everybody can get a vaccine? How do you treat people who didn't get their vaccine in the UK?
Yes.
And therefore you don't have evidence of it. So there are a lot of things that we're working through still, and I'll come back next month and be able to say more about that.
And when you say, obviously I don't need to remind you, next month is July, the classic holiday season for Brits with if they have children is August. Obviously every day is precious to them. Early July, mid-July, when, Secretary of State, in July?
Yeah, look, I want to be completely upfront and say that we're still waiting.
You always are, Mr. Shapps. Indeed.
That's very kind of you to say. But we're still waiting for quite a bit of scientific data to come in, and the ramifications of decisions which have yet to be made, like what happens to vaccinating children. I can say with certainty, none of this will be before the 19th of July. That's the terminus date, as the Prime Minister describes it, for what happens domestically, and then we'll be looking at a phased approach probably. If you are vaccinated in the UK, then you can download the NHS app, and then you can use that to demonstrate. This is available right now. You can go to the NHS app, not the one that you use when you go into a bar or restaurant, but the actual NHS app that links to your records, and it will show your vaccine certificate if you've been vaccinated. So we can do those sorts of things possibly earlier, and we're having to look at how we treat people who've been vaccinated overseas and coming here. So sorry not to have all the answers today, but I did just think it was right, since we're starting to have these discussions with the scientists and other ministers, that we gave people an indication of where we are looking, and I'll be able to come back more about on that before the 19th.
Last couple of things. One day prior to the Prime Minister's terminus date is the British Grand Prix, which has now got to the green light. 140,000 people. Obviously, people will seek to come from overseas. They won't be in a bubble. How is that to be handled?
Yeah, I haven't seen the plans for this yet. We have had this experimental programme of public events.
The ERP,
been going on now. Yeah, that's right. And we've been able to test people before they go to the event and then do follow-up tests. And actually, the results have been very good, and particularly where the events are outdoors. We're seeing very good results.
But why hasn't the data been released through the ERP on the Brits or the FA Cup or the Download Festival? Why haven't we seen that? And what do you make of Lord Lloyd Webber seeking to sue the government over this?
Yeah, I haven't seen I don't know why, it's not my direct area, so I haven't seen the full range of data. I'm sure it'll be published in due course. I imagine they're still crunching it. It's most likely.
But people will seek to travel to the UK for the Euros semis and the Euro final. Wouldn't the Secretary of State of your job want to say, OK, how have these programmes gone if we're going to bring in 180,000 people to watch some football?
But bear in mind that people can't just come here to watch the footy. We're not back in that world yet, I'm afraid. It would be lovely if we were. So where people do come, it's on a special programme. They're having to sign specific agreements to be tested each day and only go to the football. So I'm afraid we're not back at the kind of old world where we could just come and go, which is lovely, and we want to get back there quite yet.
One of your colleagues, Rishi Sunak, can't wait to ditch his mask once it's legal. Do you concur?
Oh, well, I think we can't. All of us can't wait to get out of this all the restrictions of coronavirus. But the government's carrying out a number of different pieces of work on this to look at what should happen to what are called the non-pharmaceutical interventions, or NPIs. So those are everything apart from the vaccinations, so social distancing, wearing face masks and the like. And we're going to report on that before the 19th of July and plot out the way forward with regard to whether people will need to continue to distance or wear masks in different circumstances and situations, like public transport, for example. So generically, of course, everyone's looking forward to being able to ditch the mask. Right. But I want to follow the science, so I'm going to wait for that report first.
You won't have to wait long for an LBC exclusive, Mr. Shapps, about a presentation TfL gave road safety experts, or will give them next week, in which they blame the James Bond and the Simpsons for a culture that causes dangerous driving and portrays it as being entertaining or attractive. When you look at the money that Sadiq Khan and TfL need to keep London's transport network going, the money that you and your colleagues have bailed them out, should they be spending it on presentations about the Simpsons?
I haven't seen that actually yet, and you're right about the money. It's cost us £4 billion of taxpayers' money to bail out Sadiq Khan's TfL so far. I haven't seen that presentation you're talking about. There is already a very good government-sponsored campaign called the Think campaign, which particularly is aimed at sort of 17 to 24-year-olds who are the category, particularly males, who have a very high proportion of the car accidents and, I'm afraid, fatalities in the UK at the moment. And that's a specific group that we aim very specifically on to try to bring these numbers down. I haven't actually seen the campaign that you're talking about, so I look forward to it.
All right. Well, if you want to stay tuned, we're coming to it in just a few moments. After I ask you the final question, we mentioned one of your colleagues, Mr. Sunak. I wonder if we can mention Matt Hancock and the suggestion that his career could be in the balance over photographs where he seems to be ignoring social distancing and getting close to a colleague.
Well, I as ever with private.
Don't tell me you've not seen this, Mr. Shapps.
I have seen the photo, but as ever with private.
What's your reaction to the photograph, Mr. Shapps?
Commenting on other people's personal lives, and I think I'll stick with that tradition here.
Well, I'm just saying, should the Secretary of State for Health be ignoring social distancing and wearing a mask in that fashion?
Well, I'm quite sure that whatever the rules were at the time were followed.
Wow!
Which was
if
more
those
recent.
are the rules, I want to work where you work. This is phenomenal, Mr. Shapps.
Well, you'll recall that there was a point at which social distancing rules were changed. But look, as I say, I don't want to comment on somebody else's private life. That is for them. I'm more interested in the job that everybody does in their own portfolios. Me as transport, him as as health secretary.
Current health secretary. Okay, so Transport Secretary Grant Shapps, thank you for your time today, appearing here on LBC.
Secretary Grant Shapps is with us now. Mr. Shapps, you get the badge for the most popular minister this morning. Why these countries in particular?
Well, we took the scientific advice of the Joint Biosecurity Centre. They said these are the countries which could now be moved to the green list. That means that you can travel there. Be aware there are still some things you'll need to do. You'll still need to test when you come home, for example. But it does mean that there's a little bit of relief, as you mentioned in that report, for the travel industry and, of course, for people who wish to get away. But it won't be quite like it was in the 2019 in the old days, but we're a move in a positive direction.
OK, Balearics and Madeira, though, are on the watch list, amongst others, the green watch list. I mean, you more than most will know what it's like to get somewhere and then immediately have to come back and quarantine. Would you book a holiday to Mallorca at the moment?
Yeah, so I should just explain the watch list, the green watch list. It means they're on the green list. It means you can go. It's treated like a green list. But we're just being completely open with the data that the scientists have given us and saying there are 1 or 2 concerns. It might mean that we have to perhaps respond quickly on there. So we've said it's the green watch list in order that people can see exactly what we're seeing about it. And I have to say, whoever is booking to go anywhere this summer at all, travel insurance, making sure your flights are changeable, and making sure the accommodation is changeable, all those things are going to be very, very important this particular year. And I think, people will need to weigh up whether that is going to be work for them or not.
Yeah, because, I mean, we saw what happened with Portugal, though, didn't we? And that was on the green list, the watch list, and that's flipped in a heartbeat. So that my question again is, would you book a holiday for your family to one of the Balearic Islands at the moment, given that it's on a watch list?
Yeah, so actually they were just on the green list, and the reason we've introduced using this watch list category is to give people a bit more visibility over it if we think things might move quicker. So sadly, Kay, I don't think I've got time at the moment to take a holiday, but if people are in a situation where from next week, from next Wednesday, Thursday, they wanted to get away, then these are the places where you can go for the purposes of holiday. Of course, being aware of all the caveats about the risk of things changing, because in this virus, we know that happens with quite a lot of regularity.
I know you're impossibly busy, and we appreciate you taking the time to join us, but would you book a holiday to Mallorca if you were less busy at the moment?
Well, as I say, you're asking me if I was in someone else's shoes. And I'm not. I'm not looking to go on holiday right this moment because I'm rather busy dealing with this and a lot of other transport issues. But so each individual will look at their own situation. I'm not trying to fudge your question. Each individual will look at their own situation, and if people have flexibility, then that obviously is going to be a bit easier this year. If people want, more surety, there are some, although a limited number of locations which are just on the green list. They don't have the watch list tag after it. People will have to come to their own decisions, and I think most people realise that after having gone through coronavirus for what is now the second full summer.
Angela Merkel's not your best friend at the moment, is she? She wants all UK visitors to quarantine when they arrive in the EU.
No, look, I understand that. Germany doesn't have the same level of vaccinations as has happened in this country, so they'll be particularly concerned. Each country will have to come to their own decision. A country like Malta, which has a very high level of vaccination, haven't said the same thing, and other European countries will come to their own decisions, and I think I respect that. That's for them to do. But it is different in each country and largely driven by levels of vaccination that they've managed to achieve in each country.
OK, those that are lucky enough to have had 2 jabs, what sort of benefits might they be expecting a little bit further down the road?
Yeah, that's the other thing I flagged up yesterday, which is we've met with the scientists and we've discussed this, and we think that later in the summer, if you've had both vaccinations, then we may well be able to treat a location which is currently an amber in the middle there, list country, as if it were a green list country from the point of view of a double or fully vaccinated individual. So that means you'd be able to come back, take the single test, which is what you have with the green, and not have to quarantine. We need more information and data on this, and there are some difficult issues to resolve as well with regard to, what happens, for example, for children, for those who can't be vaccinated, and of course giving everybody the opportunity to have those vaccinations. And if you're over 18 now, please go and have your first jab and get the second one when you're called. So there are a number of things that needs to happen first, but I thought it was right to give people an indication of our sort of direction of travel, what we were seeing and what we think might be possible. I'll say more about that next month.
Okay, I mean, I'm guessing that it would be perfect to dovetail that into the 19th of July Terminus Day, wouldn't it?
Well, I think it's unfortunately a bit more complicated than that. For example, we've got UK vaccination certificates, and if you download the regular NHS app, that's not the COVID one that you use to check in, it's just the normal NHS app. It's already capable of displaying your vaccine certificate. It will show your vaccine status. So that's easy for people who have UK vaccinations. What do you do, for example, for a country that doesn't have any indication of vaccination status? And I'm thinking here of locations where, for example, the United States, where I think they probably have 50 different systems, and much of which is paper-based in different states. So there are complications in terms of how you would accept other people's vaccination certification. And those are the things that we'll be working through, which I imagine will take longer than the 19th of July, particularly for people travelling from other countries here. Yeah. So we'll probably focus in phase one on UK vaccinated people who've been double vaccinated, and what that means for their travel into amber areas.
Okay, so it's looking more like August, really, isn't it?
Well, as I say, you're preempting something which I just don't know the answer to, and I want to be completely upfront with you about that, not least because the Joint Committee on Vaccines and Immunisations have yet to opine on whether children should or shouldn't have vaccinations, for example, and that's one of the very big areas, is what do you do if children are not going to be getting vaccinations. So there's quite a lot of interrelated and complicated decisions to make on this. I thought it was right just to give people an indication, and particularly the travel sector, an indication that we are looking at this, we are working with the scientists on this, and we're thinking about how we could best apply it. And so just in the interest of being transparent about it, we're telling people what we're thinking about, and I'll come back next month and be able to say more on it.
OK, Silverstone planning a capacity crowd for the British Grand Prix. Lewis Hamilton says he's worried about his fans that are in the stands. Why is he wrong to worry?
Well, I think I just saw that story before I came on. I think that the most important thing, as with all of these, this experimental program where we've been seeing numbers of crowds being able to attend events, we need to follow the science and see what that's saying. So far, as I understand it, so good. There are tests done before on these programs, experimental programs. There are tests done a period afterwards to see what's happening, and depending on the environment, what's happening. So, for example, obviously we know outdoor events are much better than indoor events, for example, from the point of view of not spreading the virus. So my simple answer is, let's follow the science. Let's see what that says, and then be able to open events as per the opportunities to do so. Obviously, we all want to get back to the world we used to live in. We've got to do so safely.
OK, got it. So he needs to worry not. 19th of July, George Eustice, when he was on the show the other day, and I think Rishi Sunak as well, has said that they're going to ditch their mask. Will you be doing the same?
Well, I should say, actually, the government's carrying out a review of what to do with what are called the non-pharmaceutical measures. That's things like social distancing, things like wearing masks and the like. So I'm going to wait to sort of get the outcome of that, because, again, it will be based on scientific information before I sort of jump to conclusions. Obviously, we're all desperate to sort of ditch the masks, but I think we want to wait for the science first before making a decision.
But there is no legal compunction to wear a mask, is there, after the 19th of July, which is why he says he's certainly George Eustice, who I interviewed, said absolutely it's gone.
Yeah, well, look, as I say, the whole point of setting up these reviews, following the scientific data, is to be able to advise people. As somebody I saw in the package she paid just before I came on very wisely said, let's wait and see what the technical and scientific advice is. Let's wait to see what the government recommends, and then we'll be able to make a decision. There are people who say they'll feel more comfortable, for example, on transport if they keep the mask on. Other people say it should be removed. What I want to do is see what the science says and make sure that we can all go about our business as safely as possible.
Bit more cautious then. Now, I need to ask you about the Sun story this morning about the Health Secretary, Matt Hancock. What are the rules about appointing friends to a position at the heart of government which may give them special access?
Well, look, first of all, I think the actual issue is an entirely personal issue for Matt Hancock. In terms of rules, anyone who's been appointed has to go through an incredibly rigorous process in government. So whatever the rules are, the rules will have to be followed. There are no shortcutting. That, as anyone who's had anything to do with the appointment system in the civil service knows, there are very strict rules in place.
Yeah, I mean, we spoke to the Department of Health this morning. They said this appointment was made in the usual way and followed correct procedure. What exactly?
And also some time ago. I don't think it's
that procedure?
So it depends on the specific role, but people have to go through usually an interview process which involves an independent panel. Recommendations are then made to ministers. Depending on the type of role, you'll get something called appointable or non-appointable list, and then you make a decision based on the qualifications of the individual. So I don't think I think it's a bit of a red herring in this case. I think it's really a personal story, and it's not. So I don't intend to comment on somebody else's personal life.
Didn't ask you to. I was just asking you about what the rules were as far as appointing people was concerned. And I suppose I would ask you finally, would you be comfortable appointing a former university friend into your office?
Well, I would only ever appoint somebody who's qualified for the role. As I understand it, this individual was more than qualified for the role of advice being provided. As I say, beyond that, I fear you tempt me into commenting on personal matters. And the health sec's been working very hard rolling out this vaccine program, and so I'll leave it there.
Yeah, you was trying to lead the witness there, and I certainly wasn't asking you that, Mr. Shapps. I just wanted to know what the rules were. It's always good to talk to you.